Hi, everybody, and welcome to Stops in Country Music History. I am Ella Alonso, and I'm here from the Laurel branch. I've got two staff members with me, Martin and Bob, who are going to introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Martin Seaboth from the Laurel branch.
And I'm Bob Walsh from the Bladensburg branch.
And you might have seen Martin in my program. It was Stops in Music History, just general overview. But today we're going to be focusing on country music history. So if you'd like, on the French Church County YouTube account, you can go and see the previous recording. And we also, like the last program, made a playlist of the songs that we're going to be talking about. So if you'd like to listen along, there is going to be a Spotify list as well. But for now, we're going to get started with our first stop, which is going to be with Martin. And he is going to talk about Hank Williams.
Hank Williams, what a great place to start a program like this. Hank was widely thought of as the king of country music. Williams had 11 #1 country hits in his career, including such staples as Hey Good Lookin', Jambalaya on the Bayou, I'll Never Get Out of This World Alive, Your Cheating Heart, Take These Chains From My Heart, as well as a personal favorite of mine, Kalijah, which was also expertly covered by outlaw country singer Marty Robbins. In 1960, Williams' Starr was placed on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. In '61, he was inducted into the Country Music Hall of Fame. 1970, the Songwriters Hall of Fame. And lastly, in 1987, he was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Williams lived a short life, unfortunately, dying at the age of 29 on his way to one of his concerts. The official cause of death was listed as, quote, insufficiency of the right ventricle of the heart. You didn't think you were going to be getting medical technology here, did you, today? But the real cause was likely a combination of alcoholism and prescription drug abuse. His son is, are you ready for some football? Country music superstar Hank Williams Jr., who in 2020 was also inducted into the Country Music Hall of Fame.
So Martin, you said that he is considered the king of country music. Just quite the title. Why do you think that they call him that?
I think there's a number of reasons. Really, he was the first country music superstar. And, you know, when you're first or innovative in what you're doing, you tend to get more credit. In rock and roll, Jimi Hendrix often is called the king of the guitar because he really invented and innovated the guitar for people to follow afterwards. In Hank Williams' case, it was his songs. His songs were terrific songs. He had superstar success. And the thing is, even today, his songs are being covered by a million artists. Like one of my favorites is Move It On Over, that George Thorogood and the Destroyers cover. So he really was the first, the most innovative, and continues to be one of the most popular. And I think that's why he's referred to as the king of country music.
It sounds like a title well earned. So we're going to go to stop number 2 with Bob, and it's going to be with Patsy Cline.
Okay. I'm going to start with a little background. On January 21st, 1957, Patsy Cline made her national television debut singing Walking After Midnight on Arthur Godfrey's Talent Scouts. This wasn't the song she wanted to sing. Her choice was A Poor Man's Roses or A Rich Man's Gold, which is actually a good song too. But she heeded the advice of the show's producer, Janet Davis, who also had her wear a blue linen dress. She won the competition, and the single was rushed into production, being released by February 11th. The single reached #2 on the Billboard Country chart and #12 on the pop chart. Her song Crazy, written by Willie Nelson, was said to be the second most popular jukebox song of all time in the 1990 listing by Newsweek and the Music Operators Association, trailing only Elvis Presley's rendition of Hound Dog, which is actually backed by Don't Be Cruel as well, so both are A-sides. Cline was injured in a car crash in the spring of 1961, and while she was in the hospital, Loretta Lynde appeared on the Midnight Jamboree, a radio show which aired after the Grand Ole Opry. Lynde dedicated her performance of I Fall to Pieces, which had been Cline's first #1 hit, to the recuperating singer, and Cline had her husband arrange for a visit from Lynde. Funny story about that. when he went to introduce him, he said his name and realized it meant nothing to him. So he had to kind of introduce himself as Mr. Patsy Cline. Their friendship was struck, and Cline took Lynn on the road with her and served as a mentor. The other #1 single of Cline's career, She's Got You, was later a #1 for Loretta Lynde as well. Like Hank Williams, Cline was taken from us far too soon. She died in a plane crash in 1963 at just 30 years of age.
I love the story about her husband. Like, that means nothing to me. It's too funny. All right, so we are going to move on back to Martin. Stop number 3, which is Johnny Cash.
Yes, sir. Johnny Cash, the man in black. I can say that fortunately, I got to see Johnny Cash perform live in concert. The date was May 15, 1996, a day I will never forget. And the venue was the 930 Club. Yes, I know people are saying, Martin, you're lying to me. There's no way. Yes, the 930 Club in Washington, D.C. to see Johnny Cash. And that night, Johnny Cash played it all. From Folsom Prison Blues to Ring of Fire to I Walk the Line. He did covers of Soundgarden, Tom Petty, Leonard Cohen, John Prine. There was a gospel section which included standards like If I Were a Carpenter, to Will the Circle Be Unbroken, one of my favorite gospel songs, and The Far Side Banks of Jordan. And all of it that night was who Johnny Cash was and who he admired. And his audience reflected that. It probably not only the most diverse audience I've ever seen at a show, but an audience that reflected Johnny Cash perfectly. And it wasn't diverse in the standard way we say, wow, there's 8 whites, 2 blacks, and an Asian. It was nothing like that. It was diverse in every way, from age to class to race to interest to dress to religious to non-religious, everything. Give you just a quick example. The people I stood with, and it is standing at the 930 Club, as those of you who know the club. The people I stood with was a young African-American guy who's probably in his late teens, going to Howard University at the time. His favorite acts were Public Enemy and Tribe Called Quest and Johnny Cash. A young lady that I went with to the show was half Native American, half African American, who was going to UDC, whose favorite bands were Primus, Tool, and The Pursuit of Happiness. And me, a white guy who had just turned 30, I know this is way back there, and a farmer from Haymarket who was a classic rock guy. He says, Martin, I'm a classic rock guy. I like Leonard Skinner and I like Steve Miller. I said, well, that's fine with me. And there were Native Americans dressed in full headdress, congressmen with suits and ties on, all there to see one of the great performers and legends of the 20th century. And to this day, that concert remains the best concert and my favorite concert that I ever saw.
Was that the original 930 Club in 96 or the?
It was the brand new club. It was actually when it had just reopened as the new 930
remember
Club.
the timeline. You know, I was at a gas station once and Target sold T-shirts, you know, that they still probably do. T-shirts with like classic albums and classic singles. So I'm at a gas station wearing an I Walk the Line T-shirt. I look over at the guy getting gas next to me. He's wearing the same T-shirt. He's an African-American guy. So it ties into exactly what you were saying.
Oh, that's a great story. I mean, yeah, it was just amazing being at that show. You know, you're seeing college students, you're seeing homeless people, then you see a congressman that you know well with a suit and tie sitting upstairs, and then you're seeing females and males, and you know, just the people around me were just interesting to talk about how diverse that a guy who's, you know, a Haymarket farmer has got the same thing in common as a young guy going to Howard University. So yeah, and then the show was fantastic. He played like 2.5 hours, just played everything. And it was the first stop in the tour, so he was in fresh shape. That was just a great show.
I think that's a lot coming from you, especially considering how many shows you've seen. You know, it's very high honor.
Well, yeah, I mean, I have seen a ton of shows, but there's just no show that ever quite touched it. I mean, and I've seen, you know, favorite acts and all, and there was a lot of, as you said, a lot of great shows. but there was just nothing that touched that Johnny Cash show.
Well, I was 6 when you went to that show, so I don't have any fun Johnny Cash stories. But I do have some questions.
Sure.
So you had said that he calls himself the Man in Black. Why is that?
Well, probably the best answer I can give you is to quote some lines from his song Man in Black. He says, "I wear the black for the poor and the broken down who live in the hopeless, hungry side of town. I wear it for the prisoner who has long paid for his crime, but is there because he's a victim of the times. I wear the black for those who've never read or listened to the words that Jesus said. I wear it for the sick and the lonely old, for the reckless ones whose bad trip left them cold. I wear the black in mourning for the lives that could have been. Each week we lose 100 fine young men. And I wear it for the thousands who have died, believing that the Lord was on their side. I wear it for the another 100,000 who have died, believing that we all were on their side." So that's straight from Johnny Cash himself. Why he wears the black.
It's heavy.
Yeah,
It's not
it's a heavy song.
Sounds like it.
Can you continue?
No, I think you covered it. It's a lot of good reasons.
I agree.
Man in Black. All right. Well, we're gonna move on to stop number 4, which is also with you, Martin, with Glen Campbell.
Glen Campbell. He is a man that is known for a lot of things. Early in his career, he was a session musician and became part of a group of session musicians called the Wrecking Crew. In 1 year alone, they played on 564 songs. I don't know when they found time to do anything else, but they had 564 songs, and the year was 1964. Among the artists he recorded with included the Beach Boys, Nat King Cole, Sammy Davis Jr., the Kingston Trio, Lou Rawls, and Elvis Presley. In late 1964, Glen became a touring member of the Beach Boys, filling in for Brian Wilson. For the Beach Boys' 1966 legendary album Pet Sound, Glen Campbell was the guitarist on that album. And Glen was no ordinary guitarist. He was in fact extraordinary. There are many musicians who've related later in their career that said Glen Campbell was the best guitarist they ever played with, which surprised a lot of people because a lot of his hit singles had very little guitar, or for lack of a better word, pretty average guitar playing. They weren't highlighted to focus on his guitar. So it sort of became Glen Campbell's excellence on guitar was a secret in the industry that everybody knew. Perhaps Glen Campbell was most known for his many hit singles, which I've mentioned. Personal favorite is mine is Rhinestone Cowboy, which was his biggest hit. But he also had songs like Southern Nights and Galveston. In 2010, he was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease. And instead of just relaxing and trying to deal with the disease, he decided to tour with 3 of his children joining his band. He was able to tour until November 2012. He then recorded his appropriately named final album, Adios, featuring the Grammy-nominated hit single, I'm Not Gonna Miss You, which is on our playlist. To be sure, though, many music fans still miss Glen.
You were able to see him after his diagnosis, weren't you?
I did not get to see Glen Campbell. I did not. I could have. What Ella went through with me.
Not to.
What Ella said about Johnny Cash and kind of was overwhelmed. I was sort of overwhelmed thinking about seeing Glen Campbell and wondering if I could really handle it. Because he wasn't just one that toured with a little difficulty. I mean, he had trouble remembering songs. He had trouble with stuff. And, you know, his fans ate it up. Every show was sold out. But I just didn't know if I could handle it, honestly. So I did not see Glen Campbell despite being a big fan.
That's right. On a similar note, how do you think the experience of him touring with Alzheimer's compared to the challenges of seeing Brian Wilson with his mental health issues?
I did see Brian Wilson several times and saw him facing his demons. And I think the biggest difference I could say, being a music fan, was that Brian still played all the music perfectly. He still remembered all the song words. He did that. His problem became in between songs when he tried to talk about it or work with the audience. He was just talk about somebody who was not a natural at all at that. He wasn't. But as far as the program goes, it was great. The tour I saw Brian Wilson on was the Smile tour, which is my favorite Beach Boys album. And he was played terrifically. He had a terrific band with him. The vocals were great and all that. His problem, like I said, became in the small talk between songs and working with the audience. So I think that would be a big difference with what Glenn had.
They both sound really emotional. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you'd think, Martin, if you could handle Brian Wilson, why couldn't you have handled Glenn Campbell? But, two different decisions I made, and it was a good decision as far as Brian Wilson went.
Glad to hear that. Well, I think we're going to move on to stop number 5, which is, to everyone's surprise, still with Martin. He is going to talk about someone who I think is near and dear to all of our hearts in the library world, Dolly Parton.
Dolly Parton. It's early 2018. Dolly had cause for a big celebration. No, it wasn't a hit single or a Grammy Award-winning album. It was a celebration of her Imagination Library's history. It had now delivered 100 million free books to children birth through 5. By the way, this program is available in our own Prince George's County Library system. The reason for Dolly's interest in libraries and books? Her father, Robert Lee Parton. He did not get the chance to go to school because he had to start working at a very young age to help support his family. Therefore, he never ended up learning how to read or write. Parton was determined to give children across the United States something her dad never had: early access to books. A panel of educators and reading specialists pick books that are developmentally appropriate for each year of a child's life. So now that Dolly has 100 million books delivered, what's next for Dolly? Dolly says, we're going for 1 billion. I'm a big dreamer, And it was these same dreams that made her one of the best-selling country music females of all time. Her hit singles included Jolene, I Will Always Love You, which was also covered expertly by Whitney Houston for the Bodyguard soundtrack. 9 to 5, the title track from the film, and Islands in the Stream with Kenny Rogers. Dolly Parton is one of the most decorated and popular singers of all time. Whether she is receiving a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame or donating to the American Red Cross or AIDS research through her Dollywood Foundation, she is making a difference to young girls and really all of us everywhere.
And I love the Imagination library that she set up. Like you said, we do have books from birth in Prince George's County, which I like to plug in all of my story times. Parents or legal guardians who want to sign their kids up can go to our website and search for books from birth. And you get 1 free book every single month delivered to your house. That's free for you to keep up until the age of 5, which the last book, I believe, is Always the Little Engine That Could. So we've got a lot of patrons that are really excited about it. It's been really nice to share that with all of them. So I'm glad to hear you mention it. As a children's librarian, it's near and dear to my heart. It's near and dear to my heart.
Yeah, she's definitely Queen Library. I mean, you're so supportive of libraries, even before coming up with this idea and foundation. She's always been big on that. And it was interesting, it ties into her dad, but she's done so much good with charity. She's also big, as I mentioned later on too, with AIDS research and the Red Cross. I mean, she's really taken her stardom and put it in the right places to help people.
I have no doubt that she'll get to 1 billion if she wants to.
I agree, Bob.
I think Prince George's County actually there was a documentary that came out about her. And we had a watch party when it came out. So it's definitely, she's doing excellent work. So it's glad to hear you too. Feel good. All right, so we're gonna move away from you, Martin, temporarily. For our viewers, who will be back with the Martin Show. We're gonna go to Bob, and we're gonna talk about Charlie Pride at stop number 6.
Okay, before Charlie Pride, I'm gonna give a little background. I mentioned the Grand Ole Opry earlier, and the name for the show was born, we actually know the date, it was December 10th, 1927. Radio station WSM in Nashville aired the NBC Red Network's Music Appreciation Hour, which was a classical music show. Following this was Hay's Barn Days. But as George Hay was introducing the program that evening, he said, "For the past hour, we have been listening to music largely from the Grand Opera, but from now on, we will present the Grand Ole Opry." And apparently they were playing a program that had a classical band imitating a locomotive. He introduced the first guest, who was actually an African-American harmonica player, DeFord Bailey, whose harmonica he made sound like a locomotive. Thus, African-Americans have been part of country music since literally the moment its biggest showcase was born. Bailey performed on the Grand Ole Opry until 1941, when the licensing conflict broke out between BMI, the Broadcast Music Inc., and ASCAP, the American Society of Composers, Authors, and Publishers. Bailey was unable to play his repertoire and was fired from the Opry because he didn't learn a new repertoire. He operated a shoe shine stand for the rest of his life, and I think he appeared back on the Opry in like the 70s, so like 30 years later. On January 7th, 1967, Charlie Pride became only the second African American to perform at the Grand Ole Opry. We will hear about the third in a little while. He was the first African American inducted into the Country Music Hall of Fame, earning that honor in 2000. Bailey was inducted a little later in 2005, and he was the only person who sold more records for RCA was Elvis Presley. In 1992, he told the Dallas Morning News, "They used to ask me how it feels to be the first colored singer. Then it was the first Negro country singer, then first Black country singer. Now I'm the first African American country singer. That's about the only thing that's changed. This country is so race conscious, so ate up with colors and pigments. I call it skin hang-ups. It's a disease." In addition to music, Pride also loved baseball, and he pitched for the Negro League teams, the Memphis Red Sox in 1953 and the Birmingham Black Barons in 1954. He also played baseball while in the Army, winning the All-Army Sports Championship. An arm injury derailed his baseball career, though he did play semi-pro ball while working construction in Montana. He sang before the games, increasing attendance, and began playing gigs as well. Chad Atkins, who was a producer at RCA Victor, heard a demo tape and signed him to a contract. The possessor of a rich baritone voice, Pride had 29 #1 country hits, including Kiss an Angel Good Morning, which may be the song he is best known for today. Our playlist also includes The More I Do. Sadly, Pride died last year after contracting COVID-19.
Wow, just a little addition to what Bob said. He contracted COVID-19 after country music tried to honor him. So they tried to do finally to give him a long lost overdue award, and he ends up contracting COVID and dying. So, being the first Black superstar in country music, I mean, he didn't dwell on it, but he faced a lot of troubles. First was getting the acceptance and airplay. Second was keeping the acceptance and airplay. When you look out and hear this voice, that's the best voice you've ever heard, and they said, "Wow, it's a Black guy." That was,
I'm sorry to interrupt, but they
no.
sent around his, the recording without a picture attached. And also people would some of the country luminaries at the time would refuse to shake his hand as well. But his music doesn't really dwell on that.
Right. And he didn't dwell on it in interviews either. I mean, that quote that you put was, I believe, in the 90s that he talked about that in the 1990s. I mean, he kind of just didn't Race was a neutral figure to him. He didn't try to be like, I'm the black superstar. He also didn't try to hide it, but the record company sure did. And I believe he missed out on a lot of honors because of it. I mean, not that he didn't get a lot, but I mean, Charlie Pride's got undoubtedly one of the best voices, out there. And, the fact that they were still trying to make up honoring him in 2020, and then he gets COVID, which was likely it's the only time he went out. So it was, it's almost for sure that he got it from that award ceremony.
It is.
I don't have anything to add, so I think we're going to move on to stop number 7, if that's all right, which is back to Martin with Miranda Lambert.
I'm sure no one missed me quite yet, but I'm back anyway.
Thank you, Radio.
Miranda Lambert is literally the queen of country music in 2021, having won the Academy of Country Music Award for Female Vocalist of the Year for her 9th consecutive year, wow, surpassing country legend Reba McEntire, who had won it 8 straight years. Miranda performs both as a solo artist and as a member of the Pistol Annies with Ashley Monroe and Angelina Presley. Their debut single was Hell on Heels, and their album by the same name went to #1. Meanwhile, Miranda's solo career keeps on rolling along at a high level as well with their latest album, Wild Card. You turn on country music station anytime today, you'll hear either one of 2 of her big smash hit singles off this album, Bluebird, It Only Comes Out in the Wash. It All Comes Out in the Wash, excuse me. Miranda even made an acting appearance on Law and Order, her favorite show. She said she agreed to do it because she was just a fan of the show. Never wanted to act. I still don't. I just wanted to be on that show so I could be a groupie for photos and autographs. Miranda has her own foundation called Mutt Nation, which she formed with her mom, Bev, which focuses on rescue animals and shelters.
I've seen that organization on some of her YouTube videos, because you can monetize videos. And so she's, even now with the pandemic, she's still raising money for them. So that's great.
Definitely.
Let's see. So why did you put her on this list?
Well, first of all, we'll start with the obvious, the limited, and we'll work our way up. We have a lot of people who have died on this list, and Miranda's alive. So that's a good starting point. But seriously, also I chose Miranda Lambert because she is somebody that's purely, her peak in popularity is right now. And, when you try to put together a program like this, you want to honor the greats. You want to talk about people who are still alive and maybe had their prime previously, but you also want to tell people who is hot right now in country music. And there's nobody more popular than her. She's also seems to have an authenticity that is appreciated by fans. She seems to be accepted by guys, particularly because of that authenticity. And she's the type of lady that I think would, they could go out and get on the farm, go shooting with, stuff like that. While, ladies seem to like her because she stands up for ladies and all. And I think it's that authenticity, the popularity that she is now, that I thought she would be a good addition to the program.
I think you made some excellent points, both for her specifically, about her authenticity, but also, a good mix between honoring the greats and having some people that aren't dead yet. So we're going to move on to stop number 8, which is actually my stop. So I'm going to talk about Carrie Underwood, who is my favorite and one of my only country music people. So I actually remember Carrie Underwood from her run through American Idol in 2005. She was the winner of the 4th season, and I specifically remember her cover of When Will I Be Loved. She pretty much rose to country music fame right after that. She released her first single, Inside Your Heaven, literally a month after the show finished. The song debuted at #1 on the Billboard Hot 100, and a few months after that, she released her debut album, Some Hearts. The large first week sales of Some Hearts made it the biggest debut of any country music artist since they started collecting the music sales data in 1991. It's his first album that has my favorite Carrie Underwood song, Before He Cheats. It hit #1 on the Billboard's Hot Country Songs and was there for 5 weeks. At this point, it's been certified platinum 5 times, has sold more than 4 million copies, is the 4th best selling country digital song of all time. The other song that I've included on our playlist is Two Black Cadillacs, which is from her 4th album titled Blown Away. She stated in various interviews that this album features songs with a quote unquote darker storyline, which is a little bit different than her previous albums. And it was part of her global tour in 2012. And she actually released a New York Times bestselling fitness and lifestyle book, Find Your Path, in 2020, which Prince George County actually has in their collection. So she's done a little bit of everything.
What do you think why do you think Carrie Underwood's your favorite country music act? Because as you said, you were not a big country fan. What drew you to Carrie Underwood, and what do you think that she did on the show that made her popular with everybody? I mean, why did she rise to such heights based on her appearance on American Idol?
So I think, and we touched a little bit on this when we talked about our other stops in country music, I think age has a little bit to do with it. So I was 15 in 2005, and that was kind of the age where American Idol was starting to get really big. So for me, that was something that was very exciting, and to see her introduce me to a music style that I wasn't really listening to otherwise. So Taylor Swift actually came out with her album in 2006. So around that time, there were a lot of kind of younger women releasing country music. So I think that's kind of where I got started with listening to country music. And I like that young female idol. And I think too, the American Idol background really helped because back in those days, you could, call in with your votes and stuff. So she ended up receiving 500 million votes throughout the season. And she got 37 million just for the finale alone. So definitely a lot of audience participation.
Do you like Taylor Swift too?
I do. I think that I haven't listened to a ton of her newest stuff because she released an album this year. And she also released a remix or an updated version of one of her older songs. But during that age, like the teenage years, I loved Taylor Swift. And I still like her a lot. So I think just was a good time to be a singer because who is it as well? Kelly Clarkson, also around that time. So that kind of that like blonde female singer was a good time to be one.
They had to be blonde though.
It seems like a lot of them were. I'm not sure if that was like a requirement or they just all happened to be. But just kind of that like young female singer singing really emotional songs. Like even now, I think Before He Cheats is still a widely popular song. I mean, even, not going by the music sales data, you walk into any bar and put on Before He Cheats, you're going to have a ton of people singing it. Just a good, catchy, powerful song.
It's awesome.
So I'm done talking. I'm going to turn it back over to you, Martin. Stop number 9, which is Luke Bryan.
And we're going to stay with the people who are popular and superstars now, because if Miranda Lambert or Carrie Underwood is the modern queen of country music, then Luke Bryan may well be the king. Luke Bryan, since 2007, has had 25 #1 country hits and has sold over 15 million albums and 60 million singles worldwide. In 2013, Bryan was named Entertainer of the Year by the Academy of Country Music Awards and the Country Music Association. In 2019, his album Crash My Party was awarded the Album of the Decade by the Academy of Country Music. Bryan began his music career by writing songs for Billy Currington and Travis Tritt before signing with Capitol Records. But perhaps Luke Bryan is most famous for one of these two things. He performed the national anthem before Super Bowl 51, and he was selected in 2017 as a judge for American Idol. He serves alongside fellow judges Katy Perry and Lionel Richie, and they make it look as easy as Sunday morning. Luke Bryan is once again expected to hit the touring circuit this summer, but besides considering COVID, he may have another bigger decision to make with regards to one of his touring partners. In February of 2021, TMZ posted a video clip showing Morgan Wallen using the N-word with friends after a few days of heavy drinking. His music has been removed from most of the airwaves, and his record company has suspended its recording contract. Still, his music continues to sell in huge numbers. Originally, Wallen and Kaylee Hammack were expected to share the stage with Bryan on the Proud to Be Right Here tour. Perhaps a rebranding or Wallen's omission from this tour would be recommended.
Yeah, probably. What is it with these people in American Idol? Like, what do you think it is about American Idol that attracts all these people?
Well, I'll tell you, Luke Bryan's was different. It was funny researching it because I did not know this going into preparing for this program. He was asked to perform on American Idol, and he was really hesitant. He was like, I don't know, is this going to lose my credibility? Is this going to make me be really popular? He had no idea. So he went to a lot of the, quote, elders in country music and asked them, like, you know, what do you think? I mean, American Idol, what do you think? He said almost all of them said, do it, dude, do it. It's just another avenue. It's not going to hurt things. But he really felt like he needed to ask people like, you know, would I still be credible and viable being a judge on American Idol? And almost all of them were like, absolutely.
I mean, I think that brings up a good point that you brought up with Miranda Lambert about like authenticity is really important in country music.
It is.
You know? So.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you look at music genres, there's, you know, credibility is important in anything. But for me, credibility in rap and in country might be at the highest levels. I mean, if you're not credible in those two genres, you're going to have a really tough time.
I think that's fair.
I agree.
We're all in agreement.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, let's move on to step number 10, Darius Rucker. Again, with
Darius Rucker is one of the biggest African-American superstars in the music industry and the biggest in country music today. His current single, Beers and Sunshine, is topping the charts, and it is available also on our curated playlist. Rucker sings that beer and sunshine is the only BS he needs. Rucker's superstar status was first gained through the band Hootie and the Blowfish. He met his fellow band members while attending the University of South Carolina in the late 80s. And they had quite a run in the 1990s with hits like I Only Want to Be With You, Time, and I Go Blind. Unfortunately, it was also at this time that Rucker started simply being referred to as Hootie by fans. In early 2008, Rucker signed to Capitol Records, vowing to start a career in country music. And man, has he. He has since performed at the Grand Ole Opry, becoming only the third African-American to do so, and the first since the great Charlie Pride, who Bob touched upon in his presentation. In 2012, he received even a higher honor as he was invited to become a member of the Grand Ole Opry. Among his biggest country hits are the songs Wagon Wheel, which is a well-done cover, Don't Think I Don't Think About It, and Homegrown Honey.
one of the few that I'm still familiar with out of the list.
Were you a Hootie and the Blowfish fan or more of a Darius Rucker fan?
My parents were Hootie and the Blowfish fans, and so by association, I guess I was also a fan in the way that you can't control those things as a child. It's whatever your parents listen to, I guess that's what you're listening to too.
Mom and Dad, turn it off.
You know, it was my mom. You've met the
Mom.
woman.
Oh.
Has he weighed in on the Morgan Wallen controversy?
Darius Rucker?
Yeah.
He has, but it was gentle. It was more under the thing of that we still have some learning to do. It was basically his type of approach. And, you know, I think he was disappointed in the fact that, you know, that the press and really Wallen tried to use alcohol as an excuse for the actions. It's, you know, his point was kind of that, you know, when I get drunk, that's not something, you know, that I would say. And, you know, that's, he didn't like that being the angle that Wallen first said was, wow, I was drunk, so I started saying those words. But it was not a hard condemnation. I think he probably felt others should be doing that, which we should. And we do, you know, here on Stops in Music History, we definitely do condemn that in the strongest terms. You know, that just doesn't have a place. And, you know, the thing is, it's going to be even more something that country music's going to have to face, because thankfully there's more and more Black country artists. And you're going to have to accept that when you, like Charlie Pride, when you put that song on, if it's the best song out there, that needs to be on the radio, that needs to be popular. And you can't, you know, no longer in 2021 continue with this type of nonsense like Morgan Wallen. And Morgan Wallen's paying a higher price than a lot of people pay. Like somebody said in the old days, that'd have been 2 or 3 days and just be quiet for the weekend and we'll be back on Monday. That's not the case here.
True enough.
I think that's a good point. I agree with what you said. All right, so let's move on to stop number 11, which is a little bit broader and less of a person and more of a style, with Bob and Americana.
Yeah. Kind of stuff that doesn't really get played, at least not on country radio. But alt country, insurgent country, no depression, Americana, it's a subgenre. It's hard to define, as settling on a name for it seems to be. I like alt country, not just because No Depression magazine, which has covered the music since 1995, said it is dedicated to covering alternative country music, whatever that is, but because the music is an alternative to what is played on country radio and also had some similarities and crossover with alternative rock before alternative rock became the mainstream rock sound of the 90s. No Depression was the title of the first album by Uncle Tupelo, who may have been the big bang of the alt country music movement. And No Depression in Heaven is a Carter family song. The Carter family was there at the beginning of country music, and this seems to be, to me, one characteristic of alt country. It harkens back to the roots of country. The other thing I would say is that it is a music style that captures the energy and DIY spirit of punk rock, which is why Uncle Tupelo also covered the Stooges' I Want to Be Your Dog. Uncle Tupelo split into the groups Stumvolt and Wilco especially seems to have moved it more into alternative rock than alternative country. I have put No Depression on the playlist. I've also put Whiskeytown's Faithless Street on that list, if for another reason than the line. So I started this damn country band because punk rock was too hard to sing. Is a great one, and emphasizing my point about punk permeating the music. Bryan Adams has gone on to have a critically acclaimed solo career, and one of his albums was actually an album of Taylor Swift covers. And his bandmate from Whiskeytown, Caitlin Carey, has also had a great post-band career, which includes the absolutely gorgeous album Begonias, which she recorded with Dag Cockrell. So the Williams is an artist that sort of defies genres, as a lot of these do. And for a long time, her biggest success may have been that Mary Chapin Carpenter had a hit with her song Passionate Kisses, and that Tom Petty covered her song Change the Locks. For the 1998 album Car Wheels on the Gravel Road, won her a Grammy and was voted the best album of the year by The Village Voice. I have included the title track, but really it's a flawless album. She was nominated for another Grammy for the song Can't Let Go, which was actually a cover song. The original's good too. I forget the artist. It was a male artist. Slobberbone is a reminder to me that there are benefits to streaming services like Pandora and iHeart for the listener. For the artist is another story. I didn't know of them, but one of my stations kept playing them and I had to hear more. I've chosen Lazy Guy on the strength of the guest vocals by Patterson Hood from the Drive-By Truckers, another artist I could have focused on, but I don't want to talk forever. I especially love Drive-By Truckers' album, Decoration Day. But there are several great songs on Slobberbone's album. Everything You Thought Was Right Was Wrong Today, an exceptional release from 2000. The Old 97s is another band that has moved more towards the rock side of the spectrum over the years, but there are country and bluegrass elements on their first album, Hitchhike to Rome. I've included that album's version of Doreen because of those elements, but they re-recorded the song in a more raucous style for 1995's Wreck Your Life album. But Miller, the primary lyricist and lead singer, has released excellent solo work as well, and he is probably my second favorite vocalist. So who is my favorite lyricist? That would be Todd Snyder, who certainly defies easy categorization. He is maybe best known for a novelty record of sorts, Talking Seattle Grunge Rock Blues, which, as the name suggests, sends up the Seattle grunge scene and reminds us that silence is music's original alternative. He's often funny, always charming, and I've seen him perform both with the backing band and just with his guitar. He also has fronted a jam band, the Hardworking Americans. When we can all go see live music again, try to get out to see him. It's always a great show.
I was going to ask you who your favorite was, but then you beat me to it. A lot of good reason. And I think you also bring up a great point. There are tons of artists that we, less so me, and more of you two would love to recommend, but we just don't have the time. So definitely check out the playlist for a jumping off point. And if you have the chance to listen to the full albums that the songs are from, definitely do that, because we have a lot of great people listed on there. We obviously worked very hard on the playlist. So,
and a lot of the music that we have, you can get on our resources, Hoopla and Freegal. And if it's on Freegal, you can download it and keep it. You can also stream, if it's on there, you can stream unlimited per day. Hoopla, you kind of check out more like it's a library item. You check out an album for a week.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And we do have a lot of biographies on these people as well, if you're interested in researching more about some other people. So definitely a lot of great resources that we have that are free, of course. So yeah. All right, so I think we're gonna wrap it up with the last stop, which is with Martin, because we can't get rid of him. And it is going to be another wider scope, I believe, with outlaw country.
Well, I want to do a quick shout out to a few people here. For outlaw country, although he wasn't able to be here today with us, he's been sending me a lot of information and really had a lot of help with the program. Was research librarian extraordinaire John Krivak at Hyattsville. Provided us a lot of good information, good background, and particularly on this section, outlaw country. So shout out to John. If you enjoyed this particular section, thank John Krivak. Also like to thank Uncle Bob for joining me and Ella this time too. It's nice to have a third person here, and your insight was terrific. Thank you.
Thank you.
Outlaw country began in response to the Nashville Sound, which was a formula style of mainstream country that was being produced in Nashville in the early 70s. The Nashville Sound replaced honky-tonk instruments like fiddles, steel guitar, and nasally vocals with smooth string sections, layers of background vocals, and crooning akin to some of the 1950s era of pop music. Country began to take on a slick production and some serious repetitiveness, as much of the sound was made by the same group of studio musicians. In the 1970s, a host of country stars negotiated contracts with RCA and other major labels to be able to write and produce their own albums and to record them where they wanted to. Tom Paul Glaser appeared with Willie Nelson and Waylon Jennings on the album Wanted, The Outlaws, which was really the first platinum selling album of the outlaw country movement. Glaser also had a recording studio that was dubbed Hillbilly Central, which became kind of a center point of the alternative outlaw country music. Johnny Cash, Waylon Jennings, Willie Nelson were other groundbreaking original figures in that movement. The song Lukenbach, Texas by Waylon and Willie is featured on our playlist and is representative of that time period. Johnny Cash, with his middle finger up to the establishment as always, recorded live albums from San Quentin and Folsom Prison. Other country music artists firmly in the outlaw country movement include Merle Haggard, Marty Robbins, Jesse Coulter, Tanya Tucker, Charlie Daniels, Marty Stewart, and Steve Earle.
It's a lot of people.
We lost a couple of them in 2022 because John Prine and Billy Joe Shaver, right?
Yes. Yeah. And really it's the movement started in the 70s, but it's really kind of two things that go with it. One is a rebellion against kind of like the slick recording studio versions of country. And the other is, lifestyle. I mean, Willie Nelson, when he came, he really presented the 60s alternative type of lifestyle when he became part of the outlaw country movement. And then there's people like Steve Earle, who has practiced it throughout his time. And he didn't start really to the 1980s and is still going well today, but he would be another outlaw country movement member. Interestingly, and we had mentioned her before, Miranda Lambert's a lot admired by a lot of the people in the outlaw country movement. Steve Earle, when they asked him about the outlaw country movement, he said, in my opinion, it's mostly being led by females in 2021, and mentioned Miranda Lambert among one of the ones he met.
As it should be.
That's why you're the host.
Gotta bring it back. Well, I think that was our last stop. And what a journey it has been. Any final thoughts from either one of you about some of the people we've talked about, any parts that we didn't get a chance to talk about?
I guess I would just say a final thought would be, if anybody has suggestions for our next stop in music history, my hope is hopefully to do a program like this in the fall and, let Ella, Uncle Bob, or myself know what you might want to do, because you were definitely willing to program this to what people want to hear. I mean, country music, the reason we did this program was suggested by a number of people, including John, but a number of people suggested it, and I thought, hey, let's tackle this one. So any people, if you have suggestions on what you might want us to do for a future program, I would say let Ella, me, or Bob know.
Yeah, we're going to put our contact information up, so you'll be able to contact us, and then of course you're welcome to comment on the video with any recommendations that you have. Like Martin said, this was based on recommendations that we got from our last program, and we love talking about things that the patrons want to hear about. Martin is our local music expert. Bob is also an expert. I'm just here. So we're definitely taking your recommendations. I think we should do a rock genre one, but that's only because that's the only music genre I know. Yeah. Bob, was there anything else that we missed that you want to talk about?
No, I just appreciate the chance to be here and talk about music.
This was a lot of fun. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. Again, we have a Spotify playlist that we've put together with some recommendations for songs, both that we've talked about here, and then some other ones that we didn't have a chance to talk about. That is a great jumping point if you want to listen to some of the music we listened to while we were putting this together. If you're interested in more programs from Prince George's County, the YouTube channel is a great place to start, both to see what we have coming up and then also to see programs that have passed that have been recorded and uploaded. You can also find us on all of the social medias at PGCMLS, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. We're on it all. We're very active. We love hearing from you. And like Bob had said earlier, we do have some music streaming databases. If you're so interested, Freegal is our biggest one. I won't say best, but I will hint at best. But we've got some other great ones as well. And I think that is it. So thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you next time.
Thanks, everyone.